Everyone's heard of Casey Jones, the legendary railroad engineer. But to be quite honest, I never knew the details of his heroic demise until Ken Wilshire paid a visit to a museum in a town where he used to live, Jackson. In fact, here's what Ken discovered about America's most famous railroad engineer.
Over 200 miles away and over 100 years ago, the legend of a true American hero began on an engine much like this. And now it's being preserved here in Jackson, Tennessee. It's the new Casey Jones Museum, and it's certainly a fitting memorial for honoring this American railroad hero who died saving hundreds of his passengers' lives. And if you don't know much about the story of Casey Jones, he was on a run from Memphis to Canton, Mississippi back in April of 1900. Pulling 6 cars full of passengers. Casey was always on time, but this evening he was late, traveling just as fast as his old steam engine would take him. With less than 20 miles to go and almost back on schedule, Casey saw the worst possible sight an engineer could see on the tracks at Vaughn, Mississippi.
So coming into Vaughn, doing 75, knowing he's going on through, he and his firemen spot a red light on that caboose, which signals to them there is something on the main line.
There's no one who tells Casey's heroic story better than museum historian and author Norma Taylor, as she takes us back in time to that fateful night when Casey met his demise.
I think he was the kind of man who instinctively did everything he could do to save everybody that he was responsible for. First, he told Sim to jump. So his fireman jumped. He was fine, shaken up a bit, but he was fine. With one hand, Casey pulled his brake on, did whatever the engineer does to slow his train down, and slowed it from 75 to 35 before he plowed into the back of that stalled train. With the other hand, he pulled on the whistle to warn everybody to get out of the way because there were people involved with that other train. His engine turned over and he was killed, but because he had stayed and slowed that engine so much, every passenger car stayed upright on the track. Nobody was killed. There were no serious injuries. Everybody was fine because Casey Jones had stayed with that train and slowed it down. He had pulled on the whistle. Everybody was out of the way. So Casey died saving everybody on that train.
So to honor Casey's memory, a museum with a rather modest beginning in Casey's old house was established in the 1950s. This is when Jackson's leadership began to recognize their hometown legend with style. But they didn't stop here.
2 years ago, a grant was given to the city of Jackson to add to the museum. So we have our wonderful new building now, and we have expanded. We have lots of exhibits, and we can accommodate so many more people, visitors from everywhere. And we are very proud of our new facility here, which honors Casey Jones and all the railroad workers that did so much to make our country what it actually became, an industrial country.
And not just anyone who's demonstrated the ultimate act of courage has a song written about them. Now, Casey Jones not only has his own museum, but a ballad as well.
We're 1 hour late with the Southern Mail. He turned to Sim and then...
That was a common occurrence during that era, that engineers would die saving their passengers or their freight or their trains. Now, what made Casey different is that after he died, a song was written about him.
Orders in his hand, Casey Jones mounted to the cabin, took a farewell trip to the promised land.
African-American Wallace Saunders wrote a song, and that song soon was being sung up and down the Illinois Central line that Casey was working for at the time that he died. And vaudeville people picked it up, and then copywriters picked that song up, and the song went all over the world. So Casey died a hero, but the song made him a famous hero. So because of that song, he was known all over the world.
In addition to the extensive display of Casey Jones memorabilia and railroad artifacts, the museum includes a theater complete with a movie about his life. There's a gift shop filled with unique items of all kinds, There are trains everywhere to entertain and to inform.
There you go.
Norma's husband, Lawrence, is the museum's director. You'll find him all around the exhibit space, making sure everyone enjoys their visit.
This is where you ring the bell. Watch this.
People used to say they could set their watches to the time Casey came rolling through their towns. Now, in addition to hundreds of historical items about his life, guests can actually see the timepiece that kept him on schedule. It's the one he carried the night of the train wreck.
People have heard the name Casey Jones. Most people are not aware that he was a real person, so they're shocked. They'll say, "You mean he was a real person?" They think he was just a fictional character, that his life was just a story that was made up. So, first of all, they find out he was a real person. He lived right here in Jackson, and I think that's a lot of the appeal is his story, and a lot of the appeal is the trains. People are drawn to trains. I think they always will be. There's just something romantic about this story of the trains and the rides and the people who work for the trains and the families who were involved in the railroad industry. And I think all of these things draw people to our museum.
Actually, Casey probably wouldn't want people making this big of a fuss about him. He simply did what he was supposed to do, just like all the other ordinary people who perform extraordinary acts. But this is what heroes do, and this is why the museum in Jackson is such a special place to honor a man who truly personifies the spirit of the American railroad.